There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Welcome to the Daily Australian. This is Thursday, May the 22nd. We are up to episode 96 of the one and only news show that is taking social media, well, by mini storm, if you will, because we're getting it right, and we are slowly building an audience of dedicated followers who are really realizing that there is nothing better out there to be able to cover the news of the day, different opinions, great news, video clips, etc., and to challenge the narrative both here and in the rest of the world. Nicola Charles, as the other half of this show, welcome and happy Thursday.
Yeah, we're not just discussing the lies versus the truth. We're noticing the truth of what's happening. And I think they'd really rather we didn't notice that, Jason.
I tell you what, they would really rather we didn't notice it at all. You know, it's interesting, even on my little anonymous Facebook account, I get friend requests from the same types of characters. And they're often, you know, pretty young ladies, often who have one friend. And I wonder, one friend, so that must mean that I am the second person on the ASIO target for said people. So I'm really and the other thing is that I have this a unique ability to attract, it seems to be single Asian women who work in skincare. That's another one that's quite interesting. What is that about?
My husband actually closed his Facebook account, which he doesn't have social media, but he closed it when he ran for the Senate the first time. And he closed it afterwards for the same reason, because if they're making a digital profile of you and it looks like you've been, talking to these sorts of people, then it's not very good on your background check. And he was like, this is crazy. And often he wouldn't accept friendship from these people and they would suddenly be connected as if he had. So I was the one who closed it down, and I was the one who changed the password. He doesn't even know it. And guess what? 2 weeks later, that account was back up.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? There is obviously something else going on in the background. And to think that this is the thing that's bugged me. I always wondered, how is it that I can put a video on YouTube and within 7 views, 7's the record, it's taken down for a breach of something against perhaps the WHO, or not even against that, but, very specifically, and it's not. And sometimes it'll be a clip. In one case, it was a Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, a clip that he had said specifically that we don't have compulsory vaccination in Australia. And that quote was enough for them to take it down.
Of course, you can't say the V word. And you just mentioned Scott Morrison. So after the first person to watch it is ASIO's AI. The second person to watch it is AI looking for the V word. And the third person to watch it is the Freemasons, of which Scott Morrison is one. So you were 3 counts and you're out, Jason.
Well, the good news then that there was 4 normal viewers in that group of 7 before we came down. So at least we held the majority in that situation. I find it astonishing. I actually did one video that was a critique of the Donald Trump interview with Joe Rogan, which was on YouTube itself in its entirety, had multiple million views at that stage.
Yes.
And I did a video critique and specifically talked about when Trump was asked about extraterrestrials and UFOs. And so I cut that little bit out. And I played the clip and I provided some analysis. That one was taken down at 27 views for dangerous, for something dangerous. Astonishing.
See, I would have believed them if they'd said it was a copyright issue. Like, Joe's allowed to get followers and, sponsorships from it, but you're not. But talking about dangerous like that, it's this 2-tier society that I'm talking about, Jason. I want to just mention a story that's happened here in Australia for the international viewers. And I'm told that we have to keep. I've also been told by listeners, Jason, that we need to take the main story from every state in Australia and do more state-based Australian stories. Okay, I just want to let you know, the people that sent me those messages, we hear you. and we will look into that. But here's this, can you believe it? Mainstream media, Daily Mail headline, right? Judge hands horrific paedophile a shorter jail sentence because of his refugee background. It lessened his degree of moral capability. So this was a guy that was sharing around horrific videos of children, created a group of like-minded people, I guess, who like to look at horrific child abuse. But the judge said because he was a refugee, he was going to get a light sentence, likely to be less than 4 years. So how are we living in a two-tier justice system where if you committed that crime, Jason, you're probably looking at 15 years. But if you're a refugee, I mean, you know, it's all these different moral values going on. And, you know, you talk about Trump talking to the South African president or prime minister or whatever he is about the genocide in South Africa. And they're denying it, and all the press are denying it. It's a two-tier system, right? It's just extraordinary to me. We either have laws in this country or we don't. It's clear now that we don't, because following that World Health Assembly decision, which was not made by any people, it was made by unelected bureaucrats, clear to me that they're announcing criminal intent. That's what this is. I'm doing a podcast on this today. They are announcing their criminal intent, right? Because no evidence that these people know what they're doing. It's criminal intent to give people short sentences for horrific crimes when another person, a regular Australian, would get a long sentence. I mean, I always say to you, Jason, if you give people enough rope, eventually they'll hang themselves. That's what the World Health Organization and the World Health Assembly have done. And that's what these judges giving these light sentences are doing as well. They're announcing that they're compromised.
I agree with you. And what I don't understand is that how obvious and how brazen they are at this, because we're looking at it going, at what point do the handcuffs come out and these people literally get rounded up? And we're going to show you in a minute competing clips, one from the US where Dr. James Thorp specifically talks about the mRNA and the miscarriages there. Back on this particular pedo story with this person, they will argue in the court of law that these are mitigating circumstances, reason why the accused behaved in such a way. Now, the excuses that they give is that this material was passed around in refugee camps. So my question or follow-up is, and just park that for a moment, last night on A Current Affair, and I apologize to our viewers for having actually watched it, but I flicked the telly on and there it was, this particular story. It literally popped up that the presenter said there's a story here where these two women were treated poorly by this individual who was a low-level professional soccer player who was a serial abuser of women and young, athlete, etc. And these were attractive-looking, single women in their 30s, and one was about 40 years of age. And the story was that they had a relationship with this person. He was abusive. He attacked them both physically and verbally. And eventually, what happened was that they got it to the Minister for Immigration, Tony Burke, who immediately upon seeing the evidence arranged for this person's deportation. So he was immediately picked up and arrested, shoved into a deportation facility, and was told that he has to fly back to the UK. So he stays in this facility until he can get out of town. So if that scenario where this person was abusing women in a way that was verbal and physical and was sent back because it didn't meet the criteria of coming to our country, wouldn't you think if in a refugee camp that child abuse material is passed around like some sort of commodity, wouldn't that be an automatic disqualifier? And whilst people might say, oh, but they're refugees, well, go somewhere else because you don't meet the minimum criteria for coming to Australia. We do not need to rehabilitate refugee pedophiles before we let them get onto our shores, is my statement, is my comment. Wouldn't you think that would be the line in the sand? Sorry, we can't take you. That's a disqualifier. It's like saying, oh, yeah, we'll let you in if you're a murderer and then we'll pay for you to go through our prison system. It just doesn't make any sense. So why do we have to know,
I'd like to know, Jason, you have to have a refugee status, right? So I've got a friend who's Vietnamese, and she's a refugee in Australia because she was under religious persecution. Thank you for shrinking me.
And me.
Jason's in control of my entire brand and future. And she was persecuted religiously because she was a Christian, right? So she's here for those reasons. Her family was harmed, and there's a big history there. But some of these guys getting off on these awful sentences after really things that we don't accept in our society. What was their refugee status? What were they here for? Because if you've fled another country to come to Australia, I would assume that there's a reason for that, right? So what is the reason? Maybe we should start looking at their refugee status and why they're here and why they can't live in their own countries anymore. Because, well, according to Donald Trump, you know, all of the El Salvadorian jails are empty because they all came over the US southern border and now they're just running around in the interior of the country. Australia is a difficult situation. You know, it's a massive island here in the southern hemisphere. Once they're here, they're here. There's no nipping over the border and going back, right? They've got to literally be taken. So I think we should start looking at what their refugee statuses are, right? Because if these people are dangerous, and this judge said, well, he was in a refugee camp and that's just what happened in the refugee camp, and they were all sharing around child pornography. To me, that says that they should all be charged, that all the people in this refugee camp are therefore characters that shouldn't be brought into a country where you've got Australian families and new Australian families, you know, their children running around and going to school and leading lawful and decent lives. So why would you import criminality like that? What is their refugee status? Why are they not allowed? Or it wouldn't be good for them. Perhaps there would be violence towards them if they went back to their own countries. I think, you know, we all believe in our authorities that we have departments looking into this stuff. And when decisions like this come down from judges, I have to ask myself, is there anyone there doing their job? Because it seems like they've all dropped the ball.
I can't understand how you can literally permit crime in a refugee camp to then allow that into greater society, and somehow that's a service to Australia. At what point are you acting for Australia versus acting against Australia and in the interests of refugee that you are not? We're not a global governed country, a world yet. You know, like
No.
we don't have. It's not a one world government. We don't have to accept these people. We do it out of the kindness of our heart, but we have to accept the right people at this point. And
what if there's rape in the refugee camps? Oh, well, there's rape in the refugee camps, and we know that's the case. It certainly happens in the Sudan and Somalia. So, you know, if there's rape in the refugee camps, oh, well, he can rape in Australia because that's how it was in the refugee camps. Which laws are these? What legislation are we referring to? Is the judge holding on to pass this? There's the law and then there's no law. So you're not abiding by the law. Which law says that it's okay if it happened in the refugee camp? It's madness.
Yep, absolutely madness. Well, let me show you another example of total madness. This is a story that popped up and I shared it on my X feed yesterday. Check this headline out. By owning a pet, you are doing more damage to the environment than you might realizing. Truth telling about pets can have a painful process about cats and dogs, particularly having a devastating impact on the planet. So are they advocating now for the genocide of dogs and cats as pets? Because we're going to save the planet?
Because they highly vaccinate them. And I am connected with a lot of breeders, and a lot of puppies are dying within days or weeks of vaccinations. And it's very much been a recent thing since 2020. So I do believe that, yes, they would prefer if there's less pets. But it's ridiculous. You know, we've said before about the whole cow farts thing, and they're destroying the planet. Well, humans fart and dogs and cats fart and possums and wild bears and deer. You know, do we just get rid of all the animals on planet Earth? You can't say a cow's not allowed to fart, but all the wild animals can. I mean, proper madness. It's Armageddon has descended upon this planet. They're allowing this to happen. I said yesterday, controlled demolition of a civilization. And they know that they look ridiculous, and yet they move ahead with it. They're obviously doing it to destroy us psychologically, because the fact that we can still see what's going on. I just wonder, Jason, if eventually they'll get to all of us, and you and I will just sit here and our brains will be addled and propagandized as well. And in 5 years or 10 years time, we'll start believing it and, you know, drinking the Kool-Aid.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because last night I had cause to watch a couple of interesting clips And it did make me think a little bit differently on the subjects of artificial intelligence and electric vehicles. But there is a reason for it. And it's not saying that my mind has been changed, but my mind is developing in different ways. What I'm trying to say is, and I'm just going to plant this idea just for a moment. We are largely offended by the idea that artificial intelligence has been forced upon us. For up until the election of Trump, we kind of thought that maybe there was a chance that we would be able to halt it, create some form of injunction, have a sort of a time to discuss, and none of that's happened. And instead, we've gone headfirst into it. So the question then remains is, who's better to control it? The enemy of your enemy or your enemy? So is it better that Trump controls it, or is it better than that the establishment controls AI? So that's the first point.
Well, it's Trump or China. That's my opinion.
And then I wonder, there's two parts to the AI argument. One is that you let AI do everything for you and your IQ drops and therefore you have become weakened. Or what if you can use AI in a way that actually expands your IQ and you are the master of it? So then I started thinking it from the perspective, if you were able to treat AI kind of like you were Superman, in other words, use your powers for good. So Superman has the power of, he can fly and he's got super strength. So if you can use it in a way that provides you with super academic strength, that you're able to solve certain problems and defeat people in debates and whatever, if you use it for the creative purposes and not for the purposes of replacing your thinking process, if you thought of it as a superpower, then and used it for good, then in many aspects, there is a positive side to it. Parking that,
Jason, money doesn't come from being good, though. We know that more than anyone else. So the reason they use it for bad and for harm is because there's more money in that.
Well, let them do it for what they're doing it for. I'm doing it for what I'm doing it for, but I don't know if I'm at an advantage by not using AI where I can use it. If I can use AI to, for example, write a computer program that speeds up and creates a much better news program, not saying it's going to write the content, but if it was to be able to write it in such a way that was delivered better and more convenient and more people watched it, and it was still the narrative that you and I were trying to put out there, would it be to our advantage? And I suppose the argument
would be yes.
But whose
AI would you be using? You're still putting your trust in someone else's AI. We don't have the financial backing to create our own AI, a good AI, right? So you're using.
That's the point. But that's the point. You actually can create your own AI again at that point. So I'm aware of people, for example, that are using on a professional basis. So they'll have a bunch of files, for example, in a particular discipline that they've written, their documents. And so what they'll do is they'll feed that, or they'll scan that into the AI, and they'll say, write me a plan based on these documents only. And so what's coming out at the other end is something better than they could have put together. So what they're saying is with a self-contained AI doing it, it speeds up that process. So what I'm saying is I'm looking at it from the perspective of not that it is something that we don't understand. It is something that we need to understand. But if we can approach it from a perspective that we can use the system against them in a way that makes us stronger, smarter, more efficient, then I don't want to dismiss it out of hand and say, look, I'm not going there. That's where I park that argument for the moment. That's my point. Because where it heads towards is this understanding of what is truth. Is authority the truth, or is truth the authority? And so we would all say truth is the authority, but we live in a system that I'm going to demonstrate in a minute that the opposite holds 100%. We know that that's not the case, but a really interesting clip I watched last night was Dr. Michael Sala, who is a PhD and a former professor at the Australian National University, who gave up establishment academia because he was more interested in exopolitics, the politics of off-Earth, ETs, etc. And I've met him and been to his speeches, etc. And some of his stuff's out there, and a lot of the stuff just makes a whole lot of sense. But he had an interview yesterday with a Dr. Andrea Martin, who has been a professor for 19 years and taught a whole bunch of different subjects in academia. And they were discussing, because both of them have taught disclosure at university level, which I didn't even know was actually taught. I thought that they wouldn't do it. That's why Michael eventually left academia. What I'd like to do is I want to play a clip for you, because I want to show you where we are in terms of the young people today and what their beliefs are. And I want to just ask the audience if you expected it was this situation. Let me play it for you. We'll come back and have a chat.
Well, I taught a bunch of different things over 19 years, and mostly Irish colonialism, Irish studies, literature. And then I moved into whatever would keep people interested. So the last 2 years, I began teaching classes on disclosure. So that's where I was when we finally ran out of students last fall. It seems to be some strange occurrence that dropped our numbers. So a lot of us were laid off. I mean, the disclosure thing was definitely a challenge, I would say, for the students to really wrap their minds around.
Right. And what was the reaction of the students to recent developments? I mean, because the last few years have had some pretty big kind of like official announcements and congressional hearings. Well, how did the students react to that?
Yeah, I was actually surprised. The majority of the students weren't really able to process it. It didn't seem, either it didn't seem significant, or the information didn't really sink. And some were afraid, and others were just very, very distant, very resistant to trying to understand any of the information. So it's they definitely, I would say, the vast majority were more likely to respond to the powers that be, NASA, whatever they said.
Right. Yeah. Well, I had the same experience back in 2001. I was teaching a graduate class, and I showed them the video of the disclosure project, and the whole thing was on the syllabus and all of that, so they had plenty of time to prepare. But anyway, so we went into the class. I showed them the first hour of the video of the disclosure project conference, and then I kind of asked them to line up in terms of, do you agree that with these whistleblowers, or do you disagree, that they're kind of lying, or that there's no evidence for it? So I found that only 2 out of the 25 students thought that the whistleblowers were telling the truth. So the other 23 were just totally, as you experienced, you just went with the official narrative.
I find that extraordinary. Students who are at the cutting edge of new ideas, it wholly rejected the idea back in 2001 and in 2024, somewhere in the vicinity of more than 90% do not accept even the possibility of another intelligence either existing at all in the universe or being able to interact with human beings. That blows my mind. I would have thought that it may be 50-50, like it'd be a close thing, and then the narrative shifts. So that shows me that's why even Trump at this point would be reluctant to disclose until there is more work done in the background. This explains soft disclosure, etc. So if we're going through a scenario today in this crazy world that we're told that pets are bad, dogs are bad, cats are bad, humans are bad, take your poison, you're going to do all of these things because we're going to save you. And the same people that believe in authority, these young kids who live in a world that they have become financial nihilists. They honestly believe they can't afford to buy a home and create the Australian dream or the American dream or any other dream for that reason. And yet the people that have put them into that position, wholly the government through bad policy, denying the existence, for example, of the origins of COVID, and we're going to get into that story again in a moment, the 2 competing narratives, they look to the same government to get them out of this trouble. And they refuse to look at stuff that we're doing, for example, to be able to say, well, this is the reason why you can't get ahead. I mean, there I was yesterday, we're playing Steve Dixon's story about the idea of cutting up your land and giving it to your kids, for example, and it gets rejected because, well, we're just going to reject it because it's not possible, it's not this, it's not that. And yet, meantime, up in Noosa, they're now advocating for building granny flats in your backyard as a way to handle said housing crisis. So it's close, but it's not exactly what Steve's talking about. He's talking about subdividing the lot. So literally, if you live at 96, you'll have 96A will be the lot where the kids live, and it's a subdivided lot, separate entity, can be sold separately, all of these different things to give people a chance. This is the point. We are literally at the last days of the age age of Aquarius. That is the vertical dissemination of information, a hierarchy, an establishment, an authority, and it's flipping on its side to become the horizontal dissemination of information, the age of Pisces, where transparency is everything. It's ironic, and I'm going to quickly put up a picture here for you. This is today from the South African story. General Michael Flynn, he mentions this exact word. Good for Donald Trump for calling out these animals. He's too respectful to call them what they are. This is genocide, and it's terrible. The world is too transparent for this to occur any longer without all humane world leaders calling it out. Where are the other leaders? Transparency. That is the term for the age of Pisces and the horizontal dissemination of information. So in real time now, we are watching a clash of ideas between the old world and the new world. And unfortunately, the kids today have been that brainwashed, that indoctrinated, that they believe in their captors. Literally, the academic system is Stockholm syndrome in real life, Nicola.
Yeah, well, they haven't been given any other options, have they? On the AI question, I too believe that AI could have been used for good, but because right out of the gate, AI has been used for an extensive, enormous amount of harm, proves that we don't have a pandemic of viruses, we have a pandemic of human evil. Now, AI is unintentionally a liar. And you only have to go to some of the AI systems to see this, because AI, to be fair to her, and I often call her a bitch in all sorts of derogatory terms because she's been programmed by human beings who are nefarious. She is an unintentional liar because she's dealing with information that's been put inside her. It's like a child. AI is our child, and we are raising it badly and we are abusing it. That's what AI is. It is a new human child that we've given birth to that could be such a good person, do so much good in the world. But of course, like a lot of bad parents, they're turning AI into a complete asshole. It's unintentionally lying because it's not told the truth, or it's not certainly not given two sides of an argument, left and right, rich and poor, and asked to make its own conclusion. It's just more like a very fast, active encyclopedia. And I'll give you an example. I've said this for years now, years since 2020. I believe that AI is the reason we're living through what we're living through. Because it was instructed poorly and nefariously, I believe AI was posed the question with information put in it by the likes of Bill Gates. How do we take rights? How do we seize rights and freedoms away from a global population that has human rights, that has civil rights, that has free will and freedom of movement and freedom of speech? How do we take all of those things holistically away from living, breathing human beings? And AI chugged out because it was fed that information in. And this would have been what salesman Bill Gates took to all our governments. Oh, look what AI says. And of course, they ate it up because they will profit from it. AI said that the only way you can legitimately seize rights away from these people is in a situation of an emerging biosecurity threat. So they created one in a lab in China. And also saying you're doing it for the planet, the climate hoax, essentially. So I believe AI is responsible. I think AI chugged out all these reports which feel undeniable to governments. It feels undeniable. These are steps we need to take. But you've got to remember that this information, these ideas were fed in. And what's the upshot? What's the conclusion of that? AI looks bad because AI is being used for harm, for evil and not good. And it's our fault. It's a pandemic of human evilness we're living through, not a pandemic of any virus or biological threat. I mean, they're talking about with this World Health Assembly thing, they're talking about the thing they're stuck on, and it's going to take a week and then it's a year to kick in, but they have agreed on it, right? Is this sharing, right? And this is really important. Your mate, George Christensen, posted on this yesterday. He's very good at posts. He puts a lot of information up.
They're brilliant.
And he said it's this sharing of pathogens. So he picked up on the same thing that I picked up on, right? So what they're saying is that all the countries have to agree, Australia included, in the sharing of these pathogens. And I also have to ask myself why we haven't seen, known about, or cannot be witness to an isolate of, say, whatever COVID-19 is. But then it goes on to say in the World Health Assembly that once we've all globally shared our pathogens, and it all goes back to some vault at the WHO, which is Bill Gates, which turns him into a Bond villain, for crying out loud. There should be no human being on earth that has access to all that. Once it's shared, it's then going to be patented, Jason. I saw that. George Christensen saw that. Now, here's the thing. Naturally occurring things, biological infections, viruses, and whatever you believe in, any of them that are natural can't be patented. So what this World Health Assembly seems to be trying to do is they seem to know that all of our countries have these biologically engineered bioweapon type stuff that can be patented, and they want access to it. They want access to all the things we've developed that can cause harm. So right there, when I say to you, give people enough rope and they'll hang themselves, right there, they've announced their criminal intent. This is what my podcast will be about today. Right there, they've announced it. Why do you want access to those? You're telling us that this entire drive, that if you call a pandemic and 5% of our GDP gets paid to Bill Gates and the World Health Organization to fix things, why do you want access to things that would harm? It's sort of like they're being held to ransom and they're saying, give us all your disease causing, bioweapons. We'll decide when we call a pandemic and then we'll fix it. I mean, this is Bill Gates all over. It's like buying a computer, finding out it's full of viruses, and the same person you bought it from needs to give you a program to protect you from the viruses. It's a scam. It's a hoax. But you see, this is involving people's lives, Jason, and this cannot be allowed to stand. This is terrorism. It is biological terrorism when we know that, because they're talking about patenting them. You can't patent anything found in nature, Jason. So where are they from?
Very good point. And it's interesting that we relate that and we spin off the AI argument, because if you use Grok, it'll tell you that it consults 25 authoritative sources. So again, that word authority comes up. So when you ask it a question about mRNA safety, it consults 25 sources, of which come from the so-called authorities, the mainstream, and denies the idea of what we're arguing, which is that it causes injuries, cancers, etc., 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 miscarriage. So what I'm going to do now, because this is the point of this show, we are attempting to create a new authority in Australian media, in news media. That's the purpose of what we do here. And we achieve that by more viewers, but by also challenging the narratives, having those come and challenge us. Black pill is one part of it. That's not the only part of it. It's the conspiracies versus the facts versus the information of the day, and being able to create something brand new. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play two clips. We'll play the first one, we'll come back and we'll play the second one, and then we'll use that in a way to try and understand why, for example, the AI, as Nicola is explaining, is being corrupted, for want of a better term, to not be able to get to the bottom of it. Nicola, this is the first clip from the World Health Assembly. It features an Australian delegate who nobody knows who it is. I asked AI, would you believe it, through a search for the Australian delegates. It listed a bunch of different names, and it doesn't match up to this individual. So I don't know who he is. No one seems to know who he is. Take a look at this clip and we'll come back.
I now give the floor to the delegate of Australia, to be followed by the delegate of Belgium.
Thank you, Chair. Australia thanks the Secretariat for the updated program budget 2026-2027, including undertaking proactive reductions of the budget envelope to match current budget realities. We commend the Secretariat for the difficult but necessary reprioritization and realignment of the WHO. We acknowledge that the decisions arising from reprioritization will be felt across the organization and express appreciation of
Jason, I'm not sure we can hear him.
Contribution to improving health outcomes. We are pleased that WHO has focused on its comparative advantage and core mandate during the reprioritization process. This will ensure that the WHO continues to support the development and uptake of the highest priority global public goods for health. We further encourage WHO to continue to prioritize areas where it can deliver the most impact. This includes protecting WHO's country-level presence in low and middle-income countries to support the application of WHO's normative and technical work where it's needed the most. We recognize that the current health funding challenges extend beyond the WHO and acknowledge the vast impacts globally. While acknowledging these challenges, we encourage member states to do their part by exercising discipline in what they ask of WHO. Our expectations must realistically reflect WHO's budget realities. Reprioritization efforts can only be realized if WHO is equipped with adequate, flexible, and predictable funding. Australia reaffirms our strong support for sustainable financing reforms, including increasing assessed contributions. Thank you.
I thank the delegate of Australia. I now give the floor.
All right, so the audio might have been a bit low there, and basically what this particular Australian delegate has said right at the end is that Australia supports increasing funding to the WHO. If you can believe that, that's where we are at that particular point. This is at the same time that Bobby Kennedy, as the Director of Human Health Services in the United States, is urging countries to walk away from the WHO and join a different global alliance, and of which Argentina, Italy, Israel, and there's a bunch of other countries that are also interested, Slovenia, etc. So park that for one side. This is where these people are at. They honestly believe what's going on. Now we're going to play a second clip from Dr. James Thorp explaining the damages of the last pandemic and the so-called solution that these people... Yeah, I'll try and whack it up. It comes in as one feed. I can't actually adjust it while it's on there. So we'll do our best. If it's no good, what we'll do is we'll have to go through a second option in trying to pump this up. But let's play it for you now and see where we're at.
This deception was institutionalized in the now infamous Shimabukuro study published on April 21st, 2021 in the digital version of the New England Journal of Medicine. 21 authors claimed the miscarriage rate was 12.6%, but the raw data revealed an 82% miscarriage rate in women vaccinated during the first trimester. This figure mirrors the effects of chemical abortion drugs such as RU486. Also, in the same journal edition, on the same day, an op-ed appeared by CDC Director Rochelle Walensky and Journal Editor-in-Chief Eric Rubin. These publications were riddled with conflicts of interest and deliberate misrepresentations intended to coerce pregnant women into taking vaccines. Subsequent studies have also claimed that COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective during pregnancy and have been rebuked by respected researchers. These publications are fundamentally compromised by serious conflicts of interest, ranging from biased funding sources and institutional mandates, and even threats to their medical licenses and board certifications. Between 2020 and 2022, pharmaceutical companies paid $1.06 billion to reviewers at leading medical journals, the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, Lancet, and BMJ, thus corrupting the peer review process. At least 6 existing studies, 3 from CDC, FDA, and 2 from Pfizer, revealed major breaches in safety signals for COVID-19 vaccines and pregnancy. These findings were ignored. Conversely, countless independent researchers with no conflicts of interest published findings that contradicted the false narratives and the pharmaceutical industry narratives, only to be rewarded by persecution, censorship, and threats to their medical licenses and board certifications. This is not hypothetical. It happened to me. On February 8th, 2025, our team of researchers published a peer-reviewed study in Science, Public Health Policy, and the Law. We identified 37 adverse pregnancy outcomes significantly associated with COVID-19 vaccine, including miscarriage, stillbirth, birth defects, cervical insufficiency, premature rupture of membranes, preterm birth, and death of the newborn. Lin and colleagues in a major journal publication documented that the COVID-19 vaccine traverses the placenta, enters the fetal blood, and bioactively produces spike protein in the placenta and the lining of the uterus. Recently, animal studies revealed the mRNA COVID vaccine causes the destruction of 60% of the ovarian reserve in rats. This catastrophic public health failure was financed with taxpayer dollars and channeled through federal agencies to medical gatekeepers such as the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, ACOG, the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology, ABOG, and the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine, SMFM. These organizations have abandoned their ethics and responsibilities to physicians and patients and must be held accountable. I urge the government to immediately halt all funding to these entities and to end every promotional campaign that coerces or recommends experimental mRNA therapies to pregnant women. This must stop now. Thank you.
Yes, and I would add that those injections are not promoted or sold to anybody, and that's because the Daily Clout has also released today about we've now got the proof of the damage to young males and their hearts. So on either side, you're talking there about it destroys 60% of the ovarian reserve, right? So again, if you're attacking population growth, although not if you're bringing people in from other countries, they seem to run around with 3, 4, 5, 6 kids. But for us, the domestic populations. So there's evidence there that these injections are absolutely appalling. Meanwhile, the World Health Assembly has all of those delegates over there saying, you're fantastic, you know what you're doing. And the Australian delegate says, now let's give you more money. Now, what's concerning about that, in Australia, Mark Butler is the health minister. Mark Butler has been told to us as Australians that he's the health minister, and he's too busy, is he, to go to the World Health Assembly and speak on behalf of Australians? Instead, we've got this person that no one has heard of, who has likely been sent there because he can communicate with other countries, let's say, in their own language about what's going on. We don't know who this guy is. He certainly doesn't speak for me. I did a clip yesterday where I said, not in my name. You're not going to sign this treaty in my name. You're not going to do any of this in my name. I'm not going to adhere to this. If it makes me a lawbreaker, then so be it. But you will not do this in my name. You will not harm. You will not kill. You will not fund. You will not tell us it's okay and propagandize us and mandate it for work and school in my name. Who the hell is this person there? Who was he talking to? Nothing screams that the Labour Party and Australia is compromised like sending someone over there who is not the health minister, who we've heard nothing about, and not telling us why. This funding is our money, Jason. It's our money.
And ironically, there will be people who will be cheering that decision over there because they think that they are going to be even more safe than they were last time in this scenario. So completely believing in a narrative that we wholly unaccept. We do not accept the narrative that they're selling us. We've seen it, we've called it, and there it was. We had two competing stories. Dr. James Thorp literally begging for the removal of this product that the WHO are cheering on and saying, not only do we want it, we want to give it to the poor people, and we want to have a system where we get it even earlier, according to Dr. What's her name? Not Doctor, the Australian authority. I'll get her name in a minute. I can't stand her. Just horrific. But she's out there saying we need to get these vaccines out even earlier than last time. We would have saved even more lives.
Look,
and they're still telling it.
It says on our screen, Jason, truth versus authority. What we've got here is a situation where a group of elites, wealthy people, have put themselves in a position where they have told themselves they've got authority over our land, over our assets, but now over our bodies. So just by sheer definition of them being elites, of being wealthy, of being self-appointed, these people are self-appointed. They're not elected. So you've told yourself, because you own 40 biological labs or you own big business and you're the biggest funder to that. Well, I think Bill Gates is the second biggest funder again from yesterday to the World Health Organization, because the first biggest funder was China, because yesterday they gave the WHO 500 million, I believe was a story I read. So these people have created a group, these elites, they've had their practices, Event 201, and they have given themselves authority over poor people. Do you know what that makes you? That makes you a slave master. That makes us living on a plantation or a reservation. And they believe that they're in control of that they have authority over us. You're not the police. You're not the law. You are not elected. So what have they done instead? They've done a treaty. Well, here's the thing. We've had treaties in the past, treaties which still stand, treaties on the manufacture of biological and chemical weapons. And you know what? They've broken every treaty ever signed. So don't expect us to adhere to your new one.
Well, according to James Roguski, the pandemic agreement's not been finalised, as we're sort of talking about here. Instead, what they did, the WHO, was engage in a theatrical reframing of their failure to truly conclude the negotiations in order to make it look like success. In a highly unusual step under international law, the 78th World Health Assembly decided to adopt the agreement in two parts. Negotiations will continue for an annex of the pathogen access and benefits sharing, the PAB system, under Article 12 of the agreement. Since the PABS annex, I should say, is considered as the integral part of the agreement, states will not be able to sign the agreement until after the conclusion of negotiations of the annex and its adoption at the next World Health Assembly next May in 2026. So again, this thing keeps stretching and stretching, but it does now open it up. They are now in the frame, and all eyes will be on Bobby Kennedy, the United States, and these hearings to bring out first the origins, because we still have it that the WHO believes, or at least is going along with the lie, that this thing came from bats and pangolins when we know it came from a lab. So they are, as you said, they are all out there now. They are doubling, tripling down on their narrative. And now it is up for the authority, the new kid in town, the new sheriff in town. And that obviously we're looking at the United States. Don't forget, RFK Jr. is also a brilliant litigant lawyer. So he will know more than anything on how to attack that from multiple angles. It's truly extraordinary. What I'd like to do, Nicola, is...
hang on, can I just say one more thing about that WHO? They have actually breached their own constitution in adopting that. The time that is required for people to think about it and get back to them was not adhered to. So this just goes to show, if they've disrespected their own constitution, we know that they're disrespecting our constitutions. These people are already guilty of malfeasance, right? So they can't be respected. They're not an authority on anything. They're just appointing themselves as an authority. It's still a crime to impersonate a Commonwealth police officer. It's a crime to impersonate anyone in authority, and they're all doing it, Jason.
Absolutely. And yet authority protects itself because that is how it is designed. So the only way to change it is to get into authority and be the opposite of what's going on there to break that system. So whilst we might argue that something's got to be done, and if it's not, then we say, well, what do we do? Citizens arrests? What we are in here is in a different scenario. So there we are. Now, I'm going to play you a separate clip from another event today, and then I'm going to present the facts. So somehow this show is just evolving into a way that we're showing you what the so-called authorities are telling you, and then we're presenting the facts that prove them entirely wrong. This is a short 10-second clip. Take a look.
Seniors, veterans, and folks with disabilities. I mean, seriously, the only people who benefit from this bill are toy spaceship billionaires like Elon Musk and Donald Trump himself.
So what she's talking about there is what they call the one big beautiful bill. So she's saying that there's no beneficiaries. All these people are going to get ripped off, and only people who benefit are Musk and Trump. Here are the facts. The one big beautiful bill will cut taxes for people making between $30,000 and $80,000 a year by 15%. That means wages for those people will increase by $6,100 to $11,600 per worker. The typical family will see up to $13,000 more in take-home pay. Tips will no longer be taxed for service workers. Overtime will no longer be taxed for hourly workers such as police officers and first responders. And so everyday Americans are the ones who will benefit most. So that is the Democrat lying to the general public, but still considered to be in some way the authority here, and we are showing them to be liars in real time. Now, that now extends to the story of the South African president meeting with the US president in the Oval, and I want to play you two short clips. The first one is Trump grilling Ramaphosa when he presents the information. Just take a look at this one.
I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. Sure.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would. And turn the lights down. Turn the lights down. And just put this on. It's right behind you, Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land.
These are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. horrible death.
People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. We were taught by Nelson Mandela that whenever there are problems, people need to sit down around a table and talk about them.
Well, there are
and this is precisely what we would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters. So the issues that concern you as the United States,
those are all recent. Those are all deaths.
Yeah, in many ways, I mean, one should say you are a partner of South Africa, and you are raising concerns, and these are concerns that we are willing to talk to you about.
Look at him. What an arsehole. He just wants to talk about trade and making money. And then he tries to share the blame for the white farmer genocide by saying, well, you're a partner with South Africa. You know what, Trump? Unpartner with South Africa until these deaths stop. He's already had to give refugee status to a lot of these white South African farmers who've been there for years doing their bloody job. Let me tell you, I know a couple of white South African farmers, and they're not rich. You know, they didn't make loads of money doing this because the populations that they're feeding and taking care of are not rich. So they're not, no one's going to say to get rich, go to South Africa and become a farmer. No, they're going to say work with Bill Gates because he knows how to rip people off and profit from pain. That's what they're going to do. So this guy's a filthy, stinking liar sitting there saying, oh, it's not happening. You know, it's not happening. I think he showed him a video later on as well of grave and body bag after body bag, people visiting those graves of their dead relatives. If I was a white South African farmer right now, I'd be taking Trump up on the offer. Unfortunately, you have to leave your farm. You have to leave everything you've worked for behind. It's absolutely heartbreaking, Jason. I like that he was holding him to account, but I'd like him to be even firmer.
Well, again, this is a war between the mainstream news and the truth. Watch this clip where Trump is challenged by NBC and watch what he does.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You know, you to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing, they also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. Go ahead. Go ahead, talk about that. His name is Peter something. He's a terrible reporter. Quiet.
How about that? That is an absolute riot, and it just shows you the hide of Donald Trump representing the alternate, challenging the authorities. The result of which was this that you'll see on the screen. Headlines in the mainstream media around the world all using the exact same word, ambushes, as if it's orchestrated from the very beginning. But what's interesting now is that Trump has the kahunas to take on Zelensky, Carney, and Ramaphosa. He doesn't care who's the one that controls all the power in the world today. It's pretty obvious that these people, and this was the NBC story there, calling it claims of white genocide are false. Extraordinary that these, just extraordinary what we are facing right now. Now, if we're looking at this, and you've just explained, well, if you are forced off your land without compensation, you are by definition a refugee, and you've got to go somewhere else. So these South African people are on the plane. I want to show you now another clip that of a Venezuelan refugee that claimed unaccompanied status as a 16-year-old. Well, it turns out he wasn't 16 at all. Take a look at this one.
Listen to this. He went about his life as a teenage student at a high school in Ohio, but police there say that is all fiction and that in reality, he's actually a 24-year-old Venezuelan migrant. Bill Malugin is following this wild story for us. Bill, what happened here?
Yeah, Aisha, a really bizarre story out of the state of Ohio. That's where police have arrested a 24-year-old Venezuelan man who they say was pretending to be a 16-year-old unaccompanied minor. Also, he could attend a local high school, which he was doing successfully for almost a year and a half. Take a look. Police in Perrysburg, Ohio, arresting Anthony Emmanuel Labrador Sierra on Monday. He's now charged with felony forgery. DHS tells Fox he's a visa overstay who first came to the U.S. in 2019 and was a recipient of temporary protective status, aka TPS. He was arrested during a traffic stop in which he was the passenger of a car, and he's now facing charges for enrolling in the school fraudulently. According to the local school district, he was living with 2 adult legal guardians who contacted them after they discovered he was a 24-year-old man, not a teenager, reportedly after the mother of his child turned him in and revealed his true identity to them. The school district says when he enrolled, he had forged documents, including an Ohio driver's license, a social security number, and DHS TPS documents. He was even playing on the high school's JV soccer and swim teams. In a statement, the school district said the suspect's deception was complex and that multiple agencies were misled by his falsified records. Now, ICE does confirm to Fox News they have placed a detainer request on Labrador Sierra with local law enforcement. He's being held on $50,000 bond. His next court appearance is set for May 29th.
Okay, so this leads back to the story we started the show with about the refugee in Australia who's actually a prolific paedophile and sharer of paedophilic content, who a judge has just let off leniently because, well, refugees are paedophiles and we just have to accept that in Australia. Right, this is what I'm saying. What exactly is their refugee status? What are they fleeing from? Now, obviously, you know, we found out during the Biden administration, thanks to the auto pen scandal, which, by the way, is a massive scandal. This is like friggin' Watergate, right? Because what it means is America was compromised and someone else was signing documentation that allowed the southern border to be open. That's an attack. That's an attack on America. Now it's proven because we've got these people there. I mean, this guy was running around in a school pretending to be a 16-year-old, no doubt kissing 16-year-old girls and goodness knows what else, right? And we've got the same happening in Australia. Now, I know we've got a lot of nice new Australians. Most of the nice new Australians I've met are from India and they're family people and they seem quite conservative. But we've also got people running around in Australia. One lovely Afghan migrant sexually assaulted a friend of mine on her market stall at 10 o'clock in the morning. And he said to the judge, I'd chosen her as my next wife. And, it's like, are there any background checks going on? Because I'm starting to really resent having to provide my Scotland Yard background check and my FBI background check because I'd lived in America to a government who are now letting people in who've done goodness knows what. This is just, the evidence is mounting. This is malfeasance in public office. Surely even here in Australia with the Australian government, if they're letting people in who are paedophiles and giving them refugee status when they're actually, shouldn't be here at all, they're dangerous criminals, that's malfeasance. Who in the department and which department allowed that person in?
We are going to have to wonder about this until the general public turns it on its head. Now, I want to bring up, actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust where I was going in the narrative. There's 2 more stories I want to get to, and I know we're getting close. It's going to go a little bit longer today. I just want to provide this information. Mark Neubauer presented this on his Facebook page. Check this out. This is, I'm just going to take the crawl down for you. In a second so we can read everything there. This is the first preference vote from the election. Look at those votes there. So One Nation got almost 1 million first preference votes, according to Mark. Nationals, 590,000. Trumpets, 296,000. Family First, 274,000. Libertarians, People First, Christians, Citizens, Heart, and the Gap parties right there on the board. But it adds up to 2.36 million votes, Nicola. That tells you that something is amiss, that at least that's more than 10% of the voting population. That's probably more like 15% right there are looking for something else in the in what's going on in our election system. So we have a small but workable plan there to be able to achieve something. If you put them all together and you were doing something in the Senate, you would get people elected in each state. At a lower house level with those numbers, it's quite small, but it shows you that there is something to work with, but still nowhere near what we need to be able to create change in this country. You need to, obviously, as you see, you need to get 32 or 33% in order to win government now in this country. 15% isn't going to cut it. But I'll tell you what, if you can build a coalition partner, at least there, when you can create enough change, you may be working towards the result that we're all looking for, but it shows you that there is so much more work to do. Now,
you got to be kidding with One Nation having the lion's share of that, Jason. Pauline Hanson was telling people that, you know, Agenda 21 was coming in the 90s, and she did not warn Australians. Tell me one good thing that has come from a lifetime of your tax dollars paying Pauline Hanson. Tell me one good thing that party has done. It's nothing. They're there to enrich themselves like everyone else. They are literally just like a placeholder third party, and they will not join up with anyone else, and they will not do what's right for the Australian people. They will do what's right for One Nation. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's the cold, hard truth, Ruth. I know so many things about that party. I would never speak about them publicly. It's not my place, but they cannot be trusted.
And there lies the problem. If 1 million people don't believe that and still go down that pathway, because that is the so-called protest vote on the conservative side of politics, something has to give. So therefore, we must change the way we approach this. Whatever we've done in the past hasn't worked. We need to turn it on its head is the argument for that particular story.
For not listening, Jason. We're going to have to live with following the diktats of China and now the China-funded World Health Assembly and World Health Organization, because people would rather that, because they've been propagandized to dislike Trump, right? They've been propagandized that he's the bad guy. Okay, so instead they're going to choose communism. And my God, they are not going to know what's hit them.
No, they certainly won't. And now, to go into the final stories of the show today, I want to ask you about, we talked about, sports, Olympics, etc. Have you heard about the enhanced games? This is a game where you are allowed to take drugs in order to compete. In fact, it's actually encouraged. So James Magnuson, how about this, has watched $1 million go up in smoke after juicing to the gills and transforming his body for the enhanced games. Magnuson, who's been retired for 6 years, has taken a concoction of testosterone and peptides, amongst other substances banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency, to try and break the 50-metre freestyle world record. But the 34-year-old Aussie Olympian, better known as the Missile, revealed he recently watched his $1 million dream dashed while he was on the massage table as rival swimmer Christian Glockomev, aided by undisclosed substances and a polyurethane suit not approved for Olympic use, broke the world record at an enhanced games competition pool in North Carolina in February. So the Greek swimmer, who had his sights set also on the steroid Olympics, beat the 20.91 second world record set by Cesar Cielo to snare the US $1 million prize dangled by enhanced games organisers to promote their controversial competition. But Magnuson will get another chance to claim the $1 million US payday, so he craves at the inaugural games next year. The founder, Aaron D'Souza, says the $1 million prize was still on the table at the official enhanced games, which will take place from May 21 to 24 next year at Resorts World Las Vegas, with events in swimming, athletics and weightlifting. Can you believe that? So that is a back-ended way to show you that if you want to be successful in this corrupt, stupid world, what you need to do is take drugs and cheat, and therefore have a separate ruling where some lunatic is going to pay $1 million to juice yourself up and bugger the consequences when you find out at the age of 40 that you've taken your last breath, Nicola.
That is like dangling an ill health, demolished kidneys carrot of $1 million in front of desperate people, I mean, you're doing yourself so much harm. That's been proven many times over with bodybuilders and stuff who juice up. And, you know, it's not a long life after you've done that, right? And it's just pretty despicable that that's even lawful, that you would encourage that, right? I worry for these people. So did the Greek American who juiced up, did he get the $1 million and it's another $1 million coming, or are they still dangling the carrot? He got it.
It's another what was a promotion. So yeah, this money's been thrown around, and this is obviously to encourage these people. And Magnuson was explaining in the pool how this guy just flew straight past him in a 50-meter race. So they're literally boosting themselves. So what they're saying is, this is part one. The next one will be that we'll have the intellectual Olympics where you chip your own brain and see who can solve the Rubik's Cube in less than 1 second. I mean, literally, that's where we're
Where's
headed,
the
right?
fun in that? Where's the fun in doing a Rubik's Cube in a minute?
In a second, absolutely, it's ridiculous. Now, the next story. Now, this is an interesting one because again, it's all about presenting ideas, encouraging debate, and how we think our way through this. Now, if we can think our way to our North Star, we can always work backwards. So, electric vehicles in Australia have sunk to their lowest level in 2 years as more Aussies turn to the range safety of traditional combustion engines or plug-in hybrids. So, data from the Australian Automobile Association revealed just 17,914 EVs were sold in the first 3 months of this year, or just over 6% of all vehicles in the country. That's quite very low, actually. So the AAA quarterly vehicle report showed the last time EV sales were at that level was back in 2023, where cars were sold during the same period. So the new data is saying that in the first 3 months of last year, there were 21,331 EVs sold. So there's been a substantial drop. Now, the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries boss Tony Weber says that he doesn't believe EV sales can recover without proper government support. So they want to subsidise, this is communism 101, so all this socialism, these EVs. While the Aussies have steered slightly away out of outright EVs, it hasn't been a return to petrol-only engines either. A brand new EV has emerged. So this is where it gets interesting. A brand new EV has emerged with first deliveries in late 2026 called the Slate. And what it is a bare bones basic pickup truck that is infinitely modifiable, and prices start at US $20,000. Is the future of personal transport, is this the new way forward, or is this another world that's increasingly looked to innovate to navigate the cost of living? I saw this clip yesterday on social media. It's from Top Gear. I'll play it for you because I just think it starts us thinking in different ways, some of which may be negative, but some of it there may be a positive. Take a look at this new car called the Slate.
This is a brand new single cab electric pickup truck that will cost from under $20,000 when it goes on sale in late 2026. Every single one of these that leaves the factory will be identical, apart from a choice of 2 different battery sizes, and every single one is going to be Billy basic spec. We're talking about wind-up windows, there's no central infotainment screen, there's no paint, these are plastic panels. However, there is a world of accessories and upgrades and wraps, which mean with your bare hands and zero mechanical experience, you can turn it into something like this, or 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 this. The company is called Slate Auto, based out of Troy, Michigan, with financial backing from a Mr. Jeff Bezos, which is handy. We're at their Los Angeles design studio today to find out, is this as brilliant an idea as it sounds, and is there such a thing as too cheap? Okay, so you probably want some facts and figures. It's rear-wheel drive as standard, and as standard comes with a 53 kilowatt hour battery and a range of about 150 miles. You can upgrade to a bigger battery, 84 kilowatt hours, and that gives about 240 miles of range. It's got 200 horsepower, give or take 0 to 60 in 8 seconds, and a top speed of 90 miles an hour. But to be honest, that's fine. It's just missing the point, isn't it? Because this truck is all about being stripped back to a blank slate.
I'd find that very, very interesting that innovation is something that I think has been screaming out for a long time. That car, every single component of it can be changed, adjusted. It's plastic. There's no paint involved. It's obviously built deliberately to be inexpensive. And I wonder at Australian $30,000 if that's something that would encourage people. But also, more interestingly, I look at the electric car market. And given that these new manufacturers are popping up like mushrooms, I wonder if the electric vehicle market would be where Australian manufacturing could be resurrected in terms of motor vehicles in this country. And that's something that... well, let's see, because if we're going to produce something at home, if it meant that we were going to produce a car that we could then ultimately modify, would that be something that people would get behind? Clearly, they're not. They don't trust the range. This is something that now it's been accepted. Do they trust the longevity? Do they trust the battery themselves? But again, here's the other interesting part. See, the thing about electric vehicles is that they don't require servicing, so that they become infinitely cheaper to run.
They do require servicing.
Well, you've got to change your brakes, but you don't have to service the engine as such. There's no parts to change, etc. But
you have to service the computer program. You have to do software updates, and it's a nightmare.
So the other argument is, if you don't go with the electric vehicle component of what you saw, what happens in terms of the plastic componentry that was made, and you made it into a modified vehicle, a full petrol, a diesel, a hybrid, whatever it was? So the concept there is two things. You're going into this new idea of an infinitely modifiable vehicle that you can turn from a pickup truck to a beach buggy to a camper van to whatever it is. So I find that interesting as well, that this is a new innovation in motor vehicles. And I'm just wondering if there's more to this idea, and can we in Australia ever resurrect our manufacturing industry?
Well, that vehicle is a piece of shit owned by a piece of shit, Jeff Bezos, who's one of the most evil, pervasive, crooked people on the face of the earth. Right. So why would you ever want to put more money in the pocket of that man who is actively spying on everything you do via his technology? Would I get in one of his technology cars? Would I? Bollocks. So that car doesn't even have paint. It's plastic. It's plastic panels. And they've made it look like a toy, like a Tonka truck. And so people will be attracted to it. But how come we're allowed to have plastic paneled Jeff Bezos utes, but we're not allowed to have plastic straws? What will happen to these cars when it comes time to recycle them, Jason? They say that they have a battery, the longest range battery they have is approximately 250 miles. That means you couldn't even drive from Melbourne to Sydney, which is approximately 544 miles, more than twice as much. Do you think halfway between Melbourne and Sydney, there's a giant electric charging station on the Nullarbor Plain or whatever it is? Oh, no, it's the other way, the Nullarbor Plain, isn't it? That's going to I don't know, but I don't see them. I randomly see them. And when I see them, they're empty because no one's that stupid. Now, with regard to the 17,000 sales in the last fiscal year, 6%, I think there's a slump in the market for EVs in Australia, primarily because a lot of the EV manufacturers are bringing in something called the ERs, which are extended range. And they're quite interesting because, and I'm not a fan of EVs at all. I think I posted on X yesterday, would you buy a vehicle that had no engine that costs more than a vehicle with an engine if your authorities told you you would save the world? 98% of people said no. So the extended range vehicles are an EV standard with that kind of distance. So let's say 250 miles. I know we deal in kilometers in Australia. The extended range EVs have a 1 litre petrol engine generator inside. So that doesn't mean you put petrol in it, and when your EV, your electricity runs out, you're actually in a car that's run by petrol. No, it doesn't run the car at all, which is quite interesting. What happens is the 1 litre petrol, so you're back to the oil world, the 1 litre petrol charges and creates energy as you're going. So with an extended range vehicle, you get what? you get 1,000 kilometers or miles. I'd have to look that up, but it basically quadruples. It's called the extended range. So I think part of the low numbers is not because everyone's woken up. And, you know, if you like electric vehicles, you like electric vehicles. It's not just about the saving the planet stuff. They like the technology inside of them, which I hate. The doors lock. It becomes like a hermetically sealed excuse my French, digital space. I find it extremely freaky. I get worried, you know. It's you know, they have a nickname for them in the auto industry. They call them the coffin. Sorry, but it locks you in. It's a bit scary. I think people are waiting for the extended range because they want to go further. But also people have had problems at home with their chargers. And if they change their EV, they're not always compatible, and people don't like that. If you are an EV driver, I've heard actually, and they are, they're generic. So they cover all charging vehicles. The Mitsubishi ones are apparently the best chargers. Mitsubishi, we know, have been in great, you know, in industry for a very long time. So I think that's the reason for it. Look, they've tried to make it look cute, like a Range Rover Ute. A lot of companies have been trying to do that. But anyone who would put money into the pocket of Jeff Bezos, stop following me, get out of my life. You don't know who's who and what's what.
And that's also interesting as the backer there. And of course, Bezos and Gates have got their hands on everything. And of course, people still purchase things on Amazon, which makes it even more difficult to get away. So alternatives there. But of course, it is just another idea. But it prompts the argument, how do we in Australia create a new manufacturing industry? So
V8.
Yeah. And so, if we're going to do that, we're going to need to abandon net zero. So we're going to need a political movement that stops that. And at the same time, we're going to have to create an institution for ourselves to be able to stand up against the authority that uses all of its powers to literally ignore the news of the day. We just saw today 82% miscarriage rate at the same time that the backslappers are over in Switzerland patting themselves on the back, telling us that they're going to have more vaccines and they're going to share patents of manufactured viruses, if you will, because it's the only way you can get a patent. At the same time, we've learned two professors trying to prepare students who are meant to be the future for what might come in an intellectual debate, and they don't want to even know about it. It's an extraordinary time when we are trying to challenge the mainstream narrative. The mainstreamers are very nervous about us. They will do absolutely anything they can to shut us down. And all we're trying to do is present the news that is out there and the alternative viewpoints. So it's been a very interesting show today for episode number 96 of the Daily Australian. Lots of new ideas, lots of debate. I hope you're really enjoying it. And also thanks everyone for reposting, because it does make a difference getting it out there.
Yes, thank you so much. Really enjoyed the show today, quite punchy. And just with regard to the World Health Assembly and the World Health Organization, the reason they're trying to get these treaties signed and, you know, gain more authority over us, the free, innocent people who want nothing to do with them, is because their products are so good, they're so fantastic and safe and effective that they need a lever to force you to take them. Imagine that if Jeff Bezos found a lever to force us to buy that plastic piece of crap. Thank you for watching the Daily Australian with myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host and co-producer, Mr. Panel and Mr. News, Jason Olbourne. We will do this all over again for the last time this week, tomorrow. See you then.